In this video, we're going to talk about imperfect competition. We know that in perfect competition, we have an infinite number of sellers selling an identical product. We know in monopoly that we have a single seller selling a differentiated product, a product that's not like any other product. But sometimes we see product variety and a wide range of prices and products and services that aren't in a situation where there's monopoly. In this case, we're talking about monopolistic or imperfect competition. Monopolistic or imperfect competition is a market structure where we have many sellers and significant product variety. Now, sometimes you hear monopolistic competition or the word imperfect competition, and the reason is there were two important economists who contributed to these theories. Edward Chamberlain, who wrote the book, The Theory of Monopolistic Competition, and Joan Robinson, who wrote a book called The Economics of Imperfect Competition. And again, both of these economists contributed to this theory, and they had a very similar set of ideas. I like the word imperfect competition because many times students and people get confused with the idea of monopolistic competition, confusing it with monopoly. And it refers to something different. So you may hear monopolistic or imperfect competition. They're the same thing. They're referring to the same market structure, but for our purposes, I'll refer to it as imperfect competition. So what is imperfect competition? This is a market structure where there's a large number of firms competing, like in perfect competition, but each firm produces a differentiated product, similar to monopoly. Now, firms can compete on product quality, on price, and even on marketing. And like in perfect competition, firms are free to enter and exit the industry. Now, product differentiation enables firms to compete, and they can compete on price, they can compete on quality, and they can compete on marketing. And marketing might include advertising and packaging. Why is marketing important? Well, for a long time, many economists looked at marketing and advertising as superfluous, kind of adding to cost but providing no benefit. And we understand from the theory of imperfect competition that marketing does play an important economic role and has economic rationale. And marketing allows customers to be informed about a product, how it's valuable and what it does, and then also how it's different. Now, in imperfect competition, there are no barriers to entry or exit. This is the same situation that you have in perfect competition. Firms cannot make an economic profit in the long run as a result of this. So this is very important. In imperfect competition, there's no barriers to entry and exit. And as a result, firms do not make an economic profit in the long run. So let's look at the short run. Let's look at price and output. Well, in the short run, a firm in imperfect competition operates like a single price monopoly. They produce a quantity where the marginal cost and the marginal revenue intersect each other, and then they go up to the demand curve to determine the price. And in the short run, if the price is greater than the average total cost, then they can make an economic profit. In the short run, they might also make an economic loss. If the price that they're able to charge is lower than the average total cost, then they'll make an economic loss. And that's also possible in the short run. But in the long run, because there are no barriers to entry and exit, economic profit induces entry. As firms enter the market, they enter the industry, existing firms lose market share, the demand curve shifts leftward, there's a decrease in demand, it decreases the quantity where the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue, and entry keeps on happening. Firms keep on entering until the prices go down and firms are no longer making an economic profit. And when there's no economic profit, then firms will stop entering the market, and you'll be at a new equilibrium. But in the long run, firms earn no economic profit. So in the long run, firms are like perfectly competitive firms, because just like perfectly competitive firms, there's no barriers to enter and exit. Firms will enter the market when there's economic profits. They'll keep entering until there's no economic profits, and you'll have more firms in the market and no economic profits. So that's the long-run situation for firms in imperfect competition, where the average total cost and the price are equal, and firms are making zero economic profit. This is the long-run equilibrium. Now, there are some differences between perfect competition and imperfect competition. The first one is that firms in imperfect competition are price setters. That's one of the ways they can compete, by changing or setting the price. The second thing is that there's excess capacity. Firms do not produce at the lowest point on the average total cost curve, and we'll get to that in a second. Lastly, there's markup. The price exceeds marginal cost. This is not the case in perfect competition, but there is positive markup in imperfect competition. So firms in imperfect competition operate with excess capacity. We can see in the graph on the right here, the marginal cost and the marginal revenue intersect here. That determines the quantity they're going to produce. We move up to this line to determine the price we're going to charge, and that happens to intersect the average total cost curve at a point that's not the lowest point. If they produced more, they could be at a lower point in the average total cost curve, but they don't produce at the most efficient scale. They produce at a quantity which is at less than the efficient scale. And that's one of the characteristics of imperfect competition. They also have this positive markup, meaning they're producing at a price that's higher than their marginal costs. So firms in perfect competition, they don't have any excess capacity. They produce at the lowest point in the average total cost curve, and they don't have any markup. They charge a price that's equal to their marginal costs, and this is what drives the efficiency of a perfectly competitive market of extreme competition. The fact that we're operating at the lowest point on the average total cost curve, we're producing the highest quantities at the lowest prices. So we have to ask ourselves a question, well, if imperfect competition is not doing these things, is imperfect competition efficient? In the long run, firms in imperfect competition produce less than the efficient quantity. How can this be efficient? The answer to the question is product differentiation. The markup between the price and the marginal cost that arises from product differentiation is because people value product variety. But this product variety has a cost. There's a cost and a benefit to everything. So having differentiated products, having some amount of product variety to choose from is a benefit, and it also has a cost. The cost is the fact that we are not operating at the lowest point on the average total cost curve. And so it is efficient if we consider the fact that people value product variety, and there's a cost associated with that people are willing to bear. And so we can think about a situation here with automobiles. If we want to have, different people have different preferences, and therefore are going to want to have a different automobile. The fellow who drives the minivan is not going to also want to drive the sports car, and the person who drives the Prius is not going to want to drive the big SUV. And so we all have different preferences, and in order for us to meet these preferences, we have to have some sort of variety. So variety is a benefit to us, but it also has a cost. We can think about a world with no variety or no product differentiation. Maybe if we all had to wear the same clothes, sure, we could produce clothes at a lower average total cost. It would be more efficient. So the cost would be lower, but the benefits would also be lower. In fact, in a world with variety, we may be able to meet our ends, or we might be able to achieve our preferences better in a world where we have a choice, where we have some variety, than in a world where we have no choices or no variety. So this is what Imperfect competition helps us understand. It helps us understand why we have product variety, why it's economically efficient, even though we're not at the lowest point on the average total cost curve, because in order to have variety, which is a great benefit to us as consumers, and it helps us meet our preferences better, we have to also be willing to pay higher costs. And so firms in imperfect competition invest in new product development. They invest in innovation, and they try to make an economic profit by being in a continuous state of new product development. If a firm is able to develop a new product, they can make an economic profit in the short run, and it may only be a temporary situation before competitors imitate their innovation, but while they're able to have a differentiated or new product, they can make an economic profit. So this explains why firms in imperfect competition spend so much on product development and innovation. It enables them to have new products, which enables them to make economic profits in the short run. And you can think about this process of product development, innovation. If they're able to make an economic profit in the short run, and then maybe it lasts only for a certain time and it goes away from product one, then they develop product two. They make a short run economic profit. It goes away over time as people compete with them. They make product three. They make an economic profit for a short time. It goes away. And you can imagine that if you took an average of these short run economic profit triangles and you average them out, you would, in essence, have a series of short run economic profits, which is the same thing as a long run economic profit. And this explains why companies like Nike and Apple are constantly developing new products, new ideas, new variations, new colors, and they're in this continuous stream of new product development as a way of creating a continuous stream of short-run economic profits. Now, to be clear, firms in imperfect competition do not make an economic profit in the long run. But firms who are able to create a continuous stream of new products that are able to be innovative are able to create a stream of short-run economic profits that wind up benefiting them in the same way that a long-run economic profit would benefit them. So firms pursue product development, but they have to balance that. There's a marginal cost to doing product development. There's a marginal benefit that they receive in terms of economic profits from doing product development. And firms balance those. Innovation is costly, but it can increase total revenue. So firms have to balance those costs against those revenues, balance those costs against those benefits. And there's actually an optimal amount of development that they're going to do. And so a firm might release new products twice a year or once a year or once every 2 years based on this optimality. And it's different for different firms and it's different for different industries. But we see that firms will balance those costs of innovation with the benefits of innovation and provide some sort of an optimal amount of innovation. Now, who drives all that? Well, we do as consumers. And to the extent that these new products benefit us and they help us meet our preferences, we'll buy more of them. And so we participate in this process and through the marketplace wind up directing it. Now, there was a time when many economists would question the value of things such as marketing and selling and advertising. It was thought to be superfluous, and maybe these were costs that weren't really justified or necessary. But when we understand imperfect competition and the fact that firms are selling differentiated products, things like marketing and selling and advertising make more sense to us. Firms use marketing and packaging and advertising and selling to ensure customers know how their product is different from competitors. Now, a portion of the price we pay covers this fact. So selling and advertising and marketing can increase costs, but they can also increase demand. So we can look at a situation with no advertising, no marketing, no selling, and maybe a firm would have a cost curve like the blue line here, and maybe with a low volume, they're at a low point on the cost curve, meaning that if they have a low volume, they have very high costs and prices. By advertising and marketing and spending money on selling, sure, they move from the blue line to the red line, which involves higher costs at every quantity point, but if they're able to move to a higher volume, they may be at an actual lower cost. So they'll be at a lower cost point on the new curve after they spend money in advertising and marketing and selling than they were on the blue curve without spending any money on advertising and marketing and selling. So in this sense, we say that although it involves cost to do advertising and marketing and selling, firms can operate at a lower point on their average cost curve, their total cost curve, by doing it. And so this is the economic rationale for things like marketing and advertising and selling. It's not just, it's certainly not superfluous, and it certainly plays a role, an economic role in markets. Advertising might also decrease the amount of markup that's associated with firms in imperfect competition. The more people know about products, the more they know about how they're different, the more they know about new innovations, well, then they're able to maybe substitute products out. The market becomes more elastic and price sensitive. And so it's much harder to have a positive or high markup in situations like this. So this is the reason why firms spend millions of dollars on advertising, on marketing, on selling, and to establish a brand. It's to provide information to consumers about the value of products, the quality of products, and consistency. If you're familiar with a brand, you're more likely to buy something, a product or service associated with that brand. The more likely if you have a good experience with that, you'll become a repeat customer and buy again. And this is the idea behind branding. And so we say that there's an efficiency there's an efficiency about advertising and branding. Now, you can spend too much on advertising or too much on branding. The thing that firms have to do is balance the costs of advertising, branding, marketing, and selling with the benefits that they create, that they provide. There is an optimal amount that you can spend. You can spend too little on this and not be getting some of the benefits you could be getting if you spent more. You can spend too much on this and really not getting as many benefits as you're getting in costs. But one of the important things to remember is that information is an economic resource. It has economic value. Information has to be produced and delivered and made available to people. And there are costs and benefits associated with information, just like there's costs and benefits associated with all economic resources. So everything has a cost and benefit, including information. Information is not free. Oftentimes, information becomes a part of the product or service. It's embedded into the product or service. And of course, the amount of information content that's in a product or is associated with a product can vary from one product to another. And this is our summary of imperfect competition. Remember, imperfect competition is a market where you have many sellers and you have differentiated products, and there really are no barriers to entry or exit. And most of the markets that we actually see are probably markets that are characterized by imperfect competition. Monopoly is quite rare. In situations where we have perfect competition, might be rare also. So most situations that we see are situations that involve some form of imperfect competition. You can also think of imperfect competition as being on a continuum between perfect competition and monopoly. So in imperfect competition, products are differentiated. Firms can compete on the product quality, on features, on price, on marketing, on packaging, on all these different dimensions. In the short run, firms will make and can make an economic profit. In the long run, because there's no barriers to entry and exit, firms will not make an economic profit in the long run. In the long run, firms will break even, just like they do in perfect competition. Now, even though firms in imperfect competition operate with excess capacity, meaning they're not operating at the lowest point on the average total cost curve, we still consider them efficient. Why do we consider them efficient? Because people value product differentiation. People value variety, and they get benefit from product differentiation and variety. And as a result of that, they're willing to bear the higher costs that are associated with product differentiation and variety. So we say that imperfect competition is efficient because people value variety, people value differentiation. And this is our summary of imperfect competition.